Muy buenos días. Una vez más damos la más cordial bienvenida y acogida a esta Pontificia Universidad Católica Madre y Maestra. Especial saludo para aquellos que se integran en esta segunda fase de este primer simposio sobre libertad religiosa. Recordamos que este primer simposio se realiza y teniendo muy en cuenta la importancia de la libertad religiosa como derecho fundamental relacionado con la libertad de conciencia. Y para esto se están compartiendo conocimientos y experiencias prácticas útiles que promueven todo el tema en la región. También recordamos que este espacio servirá de escenario para presentar el Centro de Investigación y Estudios de la Religión de esta Pontificia Universidad Católica Madre y Maestra. Y como bien decimos nosotros los dominicanos, además de los platos fuertes que ya hemos podido disfrutar de las exposiciones anteriores, en este momento también vamos a continuar aprendiendo y participando de nuestros expositores. Y a continuación invitamos al licenciado Roberto Herrera, quien se identifica como un empresario dominicano comprometido con la libertad religiosa, quien tendrá a su cargo la presentación del siguiente expositor.
Muy buenos días y muchas gracias por la invitación a presentar al señor Green. Brian Green es el presidente de Religious Freedom and Business Foundation, Fundación Libertad Religiosa y Negocios en español. Es un destacado experto en demografía religiosa internacional y el impacto socioeconómico de las restricciones a la libertad religiosa o de pensamiento, FORB por sus siglas en inglés. Recientemente sirvió como presidente del Consejo de la Agenda Global del Foro Económico Mundial sobre el papel de la fe, del 2015 al 2016. El doctor Green imparte una cátedra como profesor visitante en la Universidad St. Mary de la ciudad de Londres, donde se desarrolla iniciativas de empoderamiento para incrementar la libertad religiosa, ayudando a aquellos que experimentan una amplia gama de riesgos socioeconómicos, incluyendo desplazamiento, desempleos, aislamiento, crimen, adicción y extremismo, convirtiéndose en personas autosuficientes. Su labor incluye apoyar y trabajar en estrecha colaboración con Business for Peace, Negocios para la Paz, y la plataforma del Pacto Global de las Naciones Unidas. Además, es miembro distinguido del Centro de Libertad Religiosa de Newseum Institute en la ciudad de Washington, D.C. Sirve como asesor para el proyecto de religión y geopolítica del Tony Blair Faith Foundation, la fundación del ex primer ministro británico Tony Blair para la Fe. También es investigador asociado en el proyecto de libertad religiosa de la Universidad de Georgetown y un académico afiliado en el Instituto de Cultura, Religión y Asuntos Mundiales de la Universidad de Boston. Antes de convertirse en presidente de RFBF en 2014, el Dr. Green dirigió el mayor trabajo realizado en ciencias sociales para recopilar y analizar datos globales sobre religión como parte de su trabajo en Pew Research Center. Impartió además docencia durante 2 décadas en varias regiones del mundo, incluyendo la ex Unión Soviética, China, Asia Central, Oriente Medio y Europa. Posee un doctorado en Sociología de la Universidad Estatal de Pensilvania y es autor de numerosos artículos y libros, incluyendo El precio de la libertad negada, The World Religion Database, The World Religion in Figures y Anuario de Demografía Religiosa Internacional. El Dr. Green escribe en Weekly Number Blog y también es un orador para TEDx, que incluye entre sus obras una serie de versos y poemas que ha escrito a través de los años. Ha comparecido en calidad de experto en religión global en numerosos medios de comunicación, incluyendo CNN, la BBC, Fox, CBS, C-SPAN, y se presenta regularmente ante audiencias de alto nivel en todo el mundo, incluyendo la Casa Blanca, el Departamento de Estado de los Estados Unidos de América, el Parlamento Europeo, el Vaticano y varios organismos de las Naciones Unidas, entre ellos el Consejo de Derechos Humanos, la Alianza de Civilizaciones de las Naciones Unidas y el Pacto Global de las Naciones Unidas. Un placer para mí haber presentado al Dr. Grimm.
Thank you. And also my wife is with me, and we just learned today that grandson or granddaughter number 10 is just announced. So thank you. So that's the most important part of the biography. It wasn't there. Yeah. So I'm going to talk about 4 things during this time. How religion is growing and it impacts markets. Restrictions on religious freedom are also growing. But religious freedom is a good. It results in peaceful, sustainable societies. And then I'll give an example of the economic impact on the United States. And then I'll conclude with a possible action that could be very useful throughout the Caribbean, a way to use our religious freedom to both advance the economy, but advance religious freedom itself. So first, religion is growing and it's impacting markets. In 2010, about 5.8 billion people were religiously affiliated, and only 1.1 billion were religiously unaffiliated. So the world is a very religious place, but projections are that it will become much more religious. Over the next 40 years, 2.3 billion more people will be in the world who are religious, but the growth of the unaffiliated population is only 0.1 billion. So the growth of the religious population of the world is 23 times faster than the non-religious. So we're in a very religious world, and it's becoming only more religious. Now, these religious dynamics are changing. So, for instance, today, most of the largest economies have a Christian majority, but as we go to 2050, the largest economy is projected to be China, which has half of the world's Buddhists in the country. And the United States second, India third. The largest Hindu population is in India. In fact, most Hindus live in India. Japan, a very religiously diverse country with Shintoism as a faith. And Indonesia has the world's largest Muslim population, and it's projected to be the 5th largest economy. So we're looking at an economic environment where religious diversity is the characteristic. So that means anyone doing business outside of your neighborhood needs to have religious literacy. You need to understand religious dynamics. Just one example, India, Prime Minister Modi is a very strong practitioner of yoga and of the Hindu faith. One day he led hundreds of thousands, millions around India in a national day of yoga. When he came to the United States a year or so ago, all of the tech giants from Microsoft, Adobe, Google, Facebook, all of them wanted to meet him, and all of them needed to know something not just about India, but about Hinduism as well. So we're in a religious world that's becoming different than the world that we've lived in before. So now in that world, where we're seeing growth of religion, a growth of Islam in many countries, and especially in some parts of the world in Asia, there are added restrictions on religious freedom sometimes in response to this growth. So restrictions on religious freedom can come from two sources. It was mentioned earlier, can come from groups in society or from governments. The latest data from Pew shows that 40% of countries have high restrictions on religious freedom, but because several of these countries are very populous, about 78.5% of the world's people live with high restrictions on religious freedom. That translates into 5.9 billion people today living with high restrictions. So just over the past decade, we've seen 1.1 billion people more than before living in countries with high restrictions. So what are this is a research that the Pew Research Center has done that I used to lead. And it's a careful analysis of government restrictions on religion and social hostilities involving religion, counting them up in each country of the world, and then being able to measure the direction of these restrictions. So we can see, first, that government restrictions and social hostilities are often related. For instance, in Pakistan, blasphemy, saying something or doing something against God or against religion, is a capital offense. You can be put to death for blasphemy. So that's a kind of government restriction. At the same time, politicians who suggest they should change this law have been assassinated for just suggesting that it's changed. That's a social hostility. The laws and the social hostility are connected. A second, in France, there's a ban on the burqa. You can't wear a veil in public places. In fact, throughout France, you can't even wear a cross if you're teaching in a school. So those are government restrictions. But recently in France, there have been attacks by terrorists, and that's a kind of social hostility in an environment where the government is trying to keep religion out. So this restriction and hostility seem to go together. Another example from India. In India, a number of states make it illegal to have beef, sell beef, eat beef, because the cow is sacred, and that's a government restriction. Recently, there have been a number of people who have been killed because they're eating beef or selling beef. So that's a social hostility. Now, all of these kinds of hostilities are not good for business, they're not good for peace, they're not good for society, and they're on the rise. So we find government restrictions are high in about 25% of the world, or about 60% of the world's people have high government restrictions. Some of the rise in government restrictions come from government harassment, such as in China, they're tearing all the crosses off of many of the churches. In 2007, 118 countries had this kind of government harassment, but by 2015, it rose to 157 countries, or 39 more countries. Another kind of government restriction is governments using force against religious groups, a growth in that. For instance, in France, when they destroyed some of the immigrant camps near the Channel coming to England, they used bulldozers and destroyed some of the churches that were being built for the immigrants. Kind of government force on the increase. Government interference with religious worship. In Russia, you can see videos of the police coming and stopping Jehovah's Witness meetings and taking away their pastors. That's a kind of government interference with worship. Also, regulation of religious symbols. This woman wore a small cross as she was an airport ticket agent for British Air, and British Air fired her for wearing a cross, but the woman beside her could wear a hijab or a scarf. So the European Court of Human Rights found that British law does not protect employees' rights to have a modest expression of their faith in what they wear. So these problems are not just, you could say, in countries you might expect, but in Britain and other advanced economies. Social restrictions happen in about 25% of the world's countries, or about 54% of the world's people live with high social hostilities. These have been rising. For instance, in 2007, 48 countries had religious groups attacking minority groups who they considered a threat to the national identity. But now it's up to 89 countries, almost doubling. For instance, in Myanmar or Burma, the Buddhist monks are leading the attacks against the Rohingya Muslims. So there's a conflict there, but it's become very much of a religious issue with one religion attacking the other. The enforcement of religious norms. In India, 5 of its 28 states have anti-blasphemy laws, and that's so that you don't offend or try to have any conversion among the Hindus. We've been seeing that rise in countries around the world. Also, harassment over dress. A journalist from Iran who is very modest and always promotes modesty was filmed secretly having a picnic with her family in a park without her hijab, and then she received death threats, and so she was harassed, even though she's very modest, but with her family, someone caught her dressing immodestly. So this is almost more than doubled, almost tripled around the world. And then mob violence related to religion. We recently even saw that in the United States with the white supremacist demonstrations in Charlottesville, Virginia. And religion-related terror continues to be a prevalent problem around the world. In 2015, 78 countries experienced religion-related terrorism, often directed at religious minorities, but not always. So all of this lack of religious freedom, as you can imagine, is not good for economies. It's not, but it's good for one kind of economy, bullets and bombs, and that's a kind of business as well. But if you want peaceful, sustainable development, the kind of business that most people are engaged in, religious freedom is supportive of that. For instance, in the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, the first goal is to end poverty in all nations. One of the forces that religious freedom sets free is the ability of people of faith to do good. And when you have that freedom to do good, then often you're addressing the issues of poverty. So even from Argentina, we have a Pope, Pope Francis, and his whole example of life is being with the poor, living humbly. And so religion itself gives that idea and inspiration for people to help their neighbor. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, one of their programs I'll mention later is in each of their stakes or their local organizations, they have a program to help people find better jobs or help with employment. So all of these things that religious groups do through inspiration or programs helps to end poverty. Second, religious freedom helps to bring gender empowerment. So we find where there is religious freedom, women have better lives, period. Where there's no religious freedom or little religious freedom, women have much more difficult lives. So in general, we find that when you have religious freedom, that gives more options for women not just to participate in society, but in religion itself. And that gives a kind of religious freedom. And then finally, and perhaps most importantly, religious freedom is very closely connected to peace. So where goal 16 of the Sustainable Developments is peace, strong institutions. So you can find more information on this at our website, religiousfreedomandbusiness.org, and all of the research is there. But I'll just mention one of the books that Gary Doxey mentioned earlier, The Price of Freedom Denied, Cambridge University Press. And this outlines very clearly how religious freedom and peace go together. And when you don't have religious freedom, then religion becomes the football, you could say, that people fight over. And the governments use religion to try to control the population, or religions get involved in trying to control the government. These kind of things lead to conflict and a lack of peace. So this idea, this is former Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, and 4 years ago he set up an organization called Business for Peace. He recognized this connection between good business and the economy, peace, and interfaith understanding. In Indonesia, we launched the first report called Business, a Powerful Force Supporting Interfaith Understanding and Peace. And then we've been recognizing businesses who are involved, business leaders and businesses who are involved in helping make the world a better place through advancing religious freedom, interfaith understanding, and peace. So I have a video, if our technology works. We'll see the stories of 12 business people